Justin, I want to thank you for being on Data Talk.
Thanks for having me. Really looking forward to this discussion. We've been telling this story of Collab Capital and why we're building what we're building for a little over 2.5 years now, and I think we're getting into a great inflection point where I think it's time to broadcast again and really tell about tell the story of the fund as well as the founders we'll be investing in.
Yeah, I saw you on Twitter and started looking into kind of the work that Collab Capital is doing and was just like, loved it. And I was like, I would love to have you on the show. Love for you to talk about the story behind Collab Capital, the work that you're doing, and why it's super important.
Well, thank you. The origin stories are always fun. I liken it to the hero's journey, which is, you answer a calling. You're usually born of some circumstance. You answer a calling. You gather allies along the way. You train, and then you go out and fight the bad guy. In this case, the bad guy in this scenario is the widening wealth disparities and the statistic or the current data point around the median household income for Black people going to zero by the year 2053, which is in my lifetime. If I'm blessed to see another 32 years or so, that'll be in my lifetime, and that's unacceptable. My parents and my grandparents, my ancestors, and this country has been through a lot, and Black people don't deserve, after all the hard work and the things that we've poured into the world and into this country, we don't deserve to be in that position. And so we're going to do our absolute best to do that by to curb that, to invest in Black entrepreneurs and innovators who want to build sustainable companies, hire people in their communities, and ultimately, hopefully, put a dent. The goal is to put a dent. This is not a singular point of attack. We know that there's other people and other things and initiatives, but we think that ours is innovative, creative, and sustainable. So we're really, really excited to continue to do this work and blessed to have purpose and a mission. So really, really excited about that.
That's awesome. What are some of the unique challenges that Black entrepreneurs, Black tech startups are having right now we have COVID-19, we have increased visibility of racism and discrimination all over our country. And I was wondering maybe you can speak to, for those that aren't aware, the issues that are being faced by our Black entrepreneurs.
Yeah, this is a great bullet point, good talking point around our origin story. Just a super quick background: Jewel, Barry, and myself, we started our startups around the same time. But we all had three different outcomes, distinctive outcomes, good outcomes, but distinctive nonetheless. And in 2012, we started our ventures. I moved to San Francisco to further my SaaS startup. SaaS is software as a service. Barry and Jewel, actually, their offices were right next to each other here in Atlanta as they built Monsieur, that's Barry's bartending startup, automated bartending startup, and Jewel's computer vision startup, Part Pick. So we grew up, but it was also a very small network of us when we were building. It was probably less than two handfuls of founders leaning on each other and really just trying to figure out how to navigate this, for the most part, fairly new space and ecosystem, particularly here in Atlanta. It was a young, fledgling entrepreneurial ecosystem, and tech was new, right? It was brand new to a lot of people, particularly the Black community, and so we were highly intentional, and as we started to exit our ventures and progress and move forward in our lives, we decided that we didn't want we didn't want the next generation of Black founders to be faced with the same challenges we had, which was being undercapitalized, under-networked, under-resourced. We didn't want that to persist. And so you said, we don't want them to start where we started. We want them to start where we left off. And so our mission has been around getting founders access to capital, yes, but also access to the right resources and the right networks that will help them further their business, which was all exacerbated by the pandemic, right? So, they say that the old adage is, if America catches a cold, Black America catches the flu. And this was not an exception to that rule. That's what happened. And you saw more Black businesses close. We saw disparities in access to loans and PPP and things like that because the infrastructure wasn't there to give readily available access to Black founders and startups, small businesses. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all small businesses until we're big, right? And so those disparities were grossly exaggerated and made worse by the closure of our communities, right? Which was the lifeblood of a lot of towns and communities is the small businesses, the restaurants, the things that put people to work every single day. Those things dried up quickly, and startups were no exception because as corporations shut down, their budgets dried up as they went to remote work, the networking and connectivity that needs to happen in order to do business development, those things dried up. So we see those challenges. We saw those challenges before, but it was immediately illuminated as soon as planes stopped flying and the doors started closing.
And Justin, I feel like what's really hard too, on top of the difficulties and challenges of just starting a business, but layering on top of what you just said with the COVID-19 impact, you have systemic racism in America. You have
Yes.
on the news, we're seeing increased police brutality, obviously the murder of George Floyd and other Black people. And so that's also hurting mental health of our Black community. So on top of like you're trying to get work done, you're trying to get your company started, you're now having on top of this layer of pain and struggle and seeing the Black community being hurt again and again, traumatized again and again. And that I have to think has to hurt your motivation, your ability to start a business because you're having to also process pain in the midst of trying to get your business going. I was wondering maybe you can kind of talk about dealing with mental health and your team and trying to start up a company amid all the violence and trauma that's happening in our country.
You hit the nail on the head. It it's unfortunate and shared collective trauma to yes, to your point, first have to deal with the ramifications and the implications of something that's mostly out of our control, right? Which is the pandemic. And then yes, it's the things that have been going on before the pandemic. It's like a second pandemic. You know, Black people have been had to endure a lot and be resilient. Black entrepreneurs and innovators are heroes to me because these things were present, ever present, before they were born. And so they were born into a pandemic of sorts. And then that was again, made worse when we actually had to deal with a disease, a virus pandemic. And so, yeah, it does weigh on you. And the great thing about being raised in the South and being a child of innovators and teachers, I come from a background of entrepreneurs and teachers, is that you use your pain and you use it as motivation. But it does not change, you know, the mindset. It does not change the reality of the situation. Excuse me. You have to face the trauma. You have to decide how you want to process that, and it's tough. I mean, to motivate a team. Our team we're a startup too, right? And our team is full of very talented, resilient Black people, and it is hard to keep them motivated, knowing that the mountain we're climbing seems to get taller, right, and steeper. And so, but what we've had to do is channel that into telling our stories. We had to channel that into our purpose and passion, which is helping entrepreneurs bridge those gaps, whether it's knowledge gaps, capital gaps, network gaps, so that they can continue to build what they're building, and be the allies along that hero journey that I mentioned before. So that's one of the ways that we've done it internally, but it's still something that I think a lot of people in general, especially entrepreneurs and those that are taking, higher than normal risk, to really face it and decide if they're going to, whether it's counseling, just getting together with other entrepreneurs. That's what Jewelberry and I do. We talk every day, just to check on each other. right? Just to say, like, how was your day? How are you feeling today? Can we do anything? You need to go for a walk. You need to get some air, just so you can process the day, get some rest and try it all again tomorrow. So I encourage, all founders of all types, but particularly black entrepreneurs and founders to take a break, be gentle with yourself, and realize that the work will be there tomorrow. I promise you,
Mm.
if you can. So, yeah, it's a lot to take on, but we're resilient people, and I think we'll continue to show that.
You said something really powerful about how pain can help to empower. I want to ask you about like when there are traumatic events happening to our Black communities and you have work the next day and you know your team members are in pain, are suffering, and a 30-minute one-on-one is not going to like cut it. Like there's a lot more
Yeah,
grieving that has to happen. And I'm kind of curious, like
yeah.
how, and I guess just advice in general for leaders who have Black colleagues on their teams and not quite sure, like, how do I like still push the business forward,
Mm.
but then like know when to pause?
I think it starts, excuse me, with honesty. One of the things that's plagued socially as a people is, and this is not just Black people, I would say as Americans even, that we tend to not want to talk about the difficult things and, the truth and the reality of the situation. First thing is acknowledge the elephant in the room, that there is a system that is broken, that is inherently biased, and designed in some ways to omit people of color, particularly Black people, from it. And um, you at your jobs, at your businesses, at these within these industries, have the opportunity to change that. So start with honesty. Start with recognizing and saying, like, I understand, or if I don't understand, I want to learn. Like, I think that's a big thing. Leaders should always be in a position to learn. We should be lifelong learners. Um, I'm going to learn what it means as best I can to be empathetic. It's hard to be empathetic if you're not willing to step outside of your comfort zone and listen to stories and have the tough conversations and realize that you may have all the best intentions in the world. Um, but it doesn't mean that you aren't in some unfortunate way complicit or part of the problem. And so ignorance and lack of knowledge is the easiest way to find yourself in a tough situation where you be faced with these feelings. And so I think it starts with having open and honest conversation, leaving space and room for um, moments where you may be uncomfortable, having a discussion and being honest with yourself and saying, you know what, this conversation makes me uncomfortable, but this is where I'm going to grow, right? When you think about weight training and building muscle, it's painful, right? Like that, lifting that weight off your chest or through your legs, it takes a certain amount of energy and will, and it hurts and it stings afterwards. But it's all a part of growth and building strength, and that's how we get stronger. Is having conversations that don't feel good, but you need to have them, so that the rest of your life, that hour long, 2 hour long conversation is a speck in the grand scheme of time if you're blessed to see many years here. So be willing to do that. Be willing to grow as a leader, as an empathetic partner in business. We're team members, so we're all here to accomplish goal, play a role. Um, and I think that's a great way to start. Is don't deny it, don't ignore it, don't pretend like I my ancestors didn't do X, Y, Z. They still benefited, right? And
Hmm.
and yours didn't.
Hmm.
And being honest about that, and um, I think that'll give way to some really healthy conversations, which then turn into healthier communities, healthier businesses, and a form of utopia that I think we would all love to live in, which is a flavor of Dr. King's dream.
And I think what you're touching on is like just that importance of having heart and empathy and truly curious and wanting to know like what we all can do, um, to especially help our Black population during this time and our Black team members. And I think some of the leaders who are really struggling are those who maybe didn't display empathy beforehand, before the pandemic, and now they're trying to grow trust right now. I think there's so many people who are hurting who don't want to even talk about it with them because they haven't displayed the empathy in the past. and maybe they got instruction from their HR team to like, well, set up a one-on-one to talk with them and see how they're doing. Do a check-in, and it's almost like a formula. Like I'll just do a check-in, and if I don't hear anything or they don't express anything to me, then I guess they're fine. When in reality, they're hurting, but they just don't feel comfortable talking to you, or maybe they're still processing it themselves. I think that's sometimes really, really hard for some leaders that not everyone's ready to talk.
Yeah, I'm reminded of a time where my wife, she and I had a discussion. She was currently working for the DoD. I'm not going to release anything that's classified, but she would talk about the need for the military um, to find and recruit diverse talent and soldiers, and if they don't do it, it could lead to a national security threat, right? It's just something that we have to be mindful of.
Mhm.
And the word is proactive, right? Which is getting in front of the problem, so that you don't have to find yourself in situations where you're having to react to something. You can say we're planning, we've prepared, and we're seeing it right now in the country with the weather, right? Not to date the podcast, but right now there's an entire state that is ill prepared, and there really is no excuse for it, right? There was ample opportunity to get things in place. And when you don't, you find yourself and people get hurt. And when you don't have a thread of trust that's strong and fortified, it's really where trust is built over time. And, with everything going on with the pandemic, all the things going on sociopolitically, and just all the things, like it is a difficult time to build trust. And I would
Yeah.
actually, in some ways, say this is a terrible time to try to build trust, because this is when people are hurting the most and they're the most vulnerable, and it will likely make them feel like they're being taken advantage of even further. So I think that yes, we got to get in front of these things. And I think what this is illuminating is it's no longer a bolt on to company culture, to community cultures. It should be woven into the fabric of the types of communities and the types of companies that you want to build. Diversity, inclusion, and equity shouldn't be something thought of after we've achieved success. So, okay, now we have to adjust and be diverse and be
Right.
inclusive. It should be woven in, and that those threads of trust will be there at the start, and you don't have to then react to these types of situations when they come up. It'll already be understood in a known way to respond.
That's right. And I think right after we saw George Floyd murdered by police, we saw a lot of companies going out on social, like addressing Black Lives Matter, talking about what they're going to be doing about it. And what I was happy to see is that a lot of companies weren't just standing up against racism, because that's, of course, you should be standing up against racism, but like going
Yeah.
further to talk about what they're going to be doing moving forward, like with donations and also what they're doing to support their Black colleagues at work. Um, and a lot of companies are also making promises to just be intentional about increasing Black representation. And I was wondering maybe if you maybe share a little bit about for those companies who want to start investing in the Black communities and want to start growing Black representation at their companies, things that they need to be thinking about when they're submitting out job postings and being very intentional about bringing a diverse pool of applicants in.
Yeah, I think this is a great question. One, I think that there's no need to reinvent the wheel. There are great companies, Black founded, Black led, that would love to help you find diverse talent. So I think about Career Karma, what Ruben is doing. I think about the good folks over at Jopwell, and what they're doing as far as getting inclusive talent. So there's great companies that you can partner with to help you diverse talent. So that's just the first thing. No need to go and reinvent the wheel. Find ways to get in touch with those folks, and write them checks, and let them do what they do best, because that's literally what they do. So that's the first thing. The second thing is really, really take a hard look at your HR policies. Take a hard look at those that make the hiring decisions, and ask yourselves the tough questions as a leader. Is there bias here? Are there things that are making it difficult for us to get diverse talent in here? Because here's the thing. I've looked at applications. They don't say anything about company culture. They don't say anything about what you can look forward to as a black person, as a Latinx person, as an Asian, like nothing. It just says, "Hey, we're a great company. We have great
Hmm.
company culture and benefits, and we're going to pay you well." Those things are important, but the reason we have attrition and the reason that you have turnover is because of what happens once they hired,
Hmm.
once they get in and they start to understand, oh, wait a minute, this is different than what I anticipated or expected. And so it's that walled garden and our bias towards that walled garden. We look around and we see a beautiful thing happening and we say, we want to bring diverse people into this great thing.
Right.
And then what you don't see and don't realize is that it is a walled garden. And on the outside, it looks it looks totally different, right? It's not until you get in there. So I think about shows like what's the show where the bosses go in, Undercover Boss, right?
Oh yeah,
I
yeah.
think about those, yeah, I think about those kinds of shows, and I think about how we need more of that, right? And also some sort of like some empathy training and some ways to get leaders more engaged in the communities that they want to hire from. They need to take some trips. I used to always say this about a young startup back in the day that is now infamous. Is Twitter. I used to say this very early on. I said, you know what, the people that are making the product decisions and the business decisions for Twitter are in San Francisco and the Bay, and they don't know what it's like to be in English Avenue down here in Atlanta or Buckhead. They don't know what's going on. So they're just pushing out. I was like, it'd be great if Twitter had an office here. Now they do now here in Atlanta. But it would have been great while they were building this early product to see how people were using this product. And I think we need more of that. And I think that will also inform hiring decisions and what it is, the types of talent that you need to bring into your corporation to make sure that you're building something that's inclusive. Um, so yeah, that's a great question. I'll think about it more. I may write something on that.
Yeah. You think about like we're seeing more and more issues with technology where the teams that built that AI or that tool didn't have a diverse pool, whether it's a gender gap, whether it's the ethnicity in the room. Be thinking about all the different ways that that product, that tool, that software could possibly hurt a marginalized community just because that voice wasn't in the room. And so, yeah, what you're saying is dead on. And I also love your comment about kind of the template mission statements of some websites where it's like, this is a great culture, a great company to work for, and you read it. And it's
Yeah,
very standard. A lot of companies will say that, obviously.
yeah,
And even some of the D&I statements at companies are very kind of templated, and you don't really know, like, oh, they say they're diverse, inclusive, but what does that really mean? And then you don't know
yeah,
until you're actually in the community at the company where you start to get a feel for what's actually happening, what sort of investments are made to employee resource groups and those types of things. So yeah, you totally nailed that right there. So tell us more about Collab Capital and the work
yeah.
that you're doing, and maybe even some of the companies that you're helping to launch.
Yeah. So we are an investment firm founded by three operators. Like I mentioned before, we built different types of companies. We had different types of exits, and you know, we recognized that on the backs of all the support we were giving as we were going and growing, we realized that we were getting to a similar kind of linchpin, if you will, which was we've helped them, we've networked them, we've helped with pitch decks, we've done all that we could do that was non-financial, but we were kind of consistently running into this next big challenge, which was getting adequate capital to founders at the earliest stages of their business. And so we're actively building a $50 million investment fund to invest exclusively in Black entrepreneurs and Black-led startups and innovative companies. And we're writing checks from $350,000 to $500,000 at this pre-seed and seed stage. So it is enough capital to learn so that people can go full time, so they can focus on the problem, and also make sure that they have enough capital to make a mistake or two as well. And that's another thing that early stage capital doesn't really give a lot of room to, especially if you don't have access to a lot of it. So the types of companies that we're looking to help are what we call innovation businesses. And so, yes, it's going to be inclusive of your classic tech companies. So you think about SaaS and mobile products and mobile apps and things like that. But we're also looking at innovations, things that are maybe a tangible product. So I think about our first investment, Hairbrella, which was a reinvented rain cap, satin lined and designed to protect those $100 plus hairdos of women. But also we found a way. Tracy found an amazing Tracy, the founder of Hairbrella. She found an amazing way to extend the utility of the product by adding a face shield during the pandemic. So now it offers obviously hair
That's
protection and
awesome.
insulation, and then also and then PPE for frontline and essential workers, outside workforces. So if you think about UPS, FedEx, et cetera, the drivers and delivery folks, they now have a way to, in the elements, we see what's going on with all the weather today, protect their hair and but also protect their face from any type of particulates and things that might be in the air. So those types of innovations we're looking forward to. Our second investment was a company called Music Tech Works and their product, which is called rightsholder.io, which is all about making sure that the people that create music get credit. And so if you are a film executive or TV executive, or you run a trailer house or something like that, and you were looking to use music for commercial purposes, so for commercial um, for that trailer, um, sometimes finding who actually has the rights uh, to um, to license that music is difficult and it's time consuming. And if you get it wrong, it's expensive because the fines on it can be up to $100,000. And so
Wow.
Jared and Bryson built a great piece of technology that aggregates all this rights information, organizes it, makes it useful to those that are looking. And ultimately, the beautiful thing about that is now artists is one more way to make sure their artists are getting paid for their creative works, which is important in the Black community. In particular, as we, even in that industry, even in an industry where um, we dominate the charts and we are, constantly being creative and bringing a lot of value to other businesses. Oftentimes, it is not all. It doesn't trickle all the way down to the
Mm.
creative, to the writer, and to the producer and the performer. So that's another product that it's for commercial usage, and it is a for profit business. It's designed to make money, but it does have an impact, and it will have a positive impact on communities of all type, and particularly those of people of color.
Awesome. What are some ways that companies can help get involved in supporting your work?
Yeah. So the first thing is be open, right? I think this goes back to some of the other discussion, the other parts of the discussion we were having. Be open and receptive to see what, not just, Collab Capital, but in general, all the startups and the founders that are getting capital from diverse led fund managers and just receiving capital. The biggest challenge is being networked. So find a way to implement a program, expand on the program if you already have one. That is maybe something like a reverse pitch or a demo day to be illuminated of what innovations are coming, and be intentional about it. Partner with them, show them how to be open to pilots, show them how to actually get business with your multi-billion dollar brand or corporation, or here's what we're looking for. Be open to um, sharing some of your challenges, because founders are out here just trying to provide value and do something that's going to be hopefully impactful for your business, particularly if it's a B2B. Or partner with them, use your audience, your influence. If you are an individual, you're a corporation as an individual, and you have your own access point to an audience, to potential customers. Open up your Rolodex, if you will, and allow them the opportunity to share. And we've seen that. We see the power of Oprah. Like, Oprah does her favorites things list every year, and we see what it does for businesses. We've seen others do similar. I think Beyonce did her Black Parade, and it illuminated dozens and dozens and dozens of businesses, and all she had to do was list them on their website, and that was positive for a lot of those businesses. So it doesn't really take a lot. Specifically for Collab, we're looking for partners that are willing to open up their networks. That is the big thing for us, and ultimately we're here to build businesses. So um, procurement is important. Be receptive to the offerings that we have and the portfolio companies that we're supporting. That's the big thing we have what we call wraparound services, which include, access to subject matter experts to help you with your ad buying strategy. If you're using, Google or Facebook ads or something like that, we have a bench where we tap accountants and legal professionals to help you with your copyright and trademarks. And those things cost money. So if you have not, non-dilutive or grant dollars, we have Collab Studio, which is our sister or sibling company, if you will, that you can support in that way. That really helps bring additional resources aside from capital to companies. So I would say those are the big things, but really it's just be receptive and be intentional about it. Make room and space at every layer of your organization and say, hey, how can we make this space or this division more inclusive and more receptive to Black ideas and Black talent?
That's awesome. Are there ways for like companies to get involved aside from providing capital and investing, like having some of their team members work in partnership with startups?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we did during our fundraising strategy or journey, we were very strategic. We actually started with um, high net worth individuals, entertainers. So you think about athletes, actors, and stuff like that. But also experienced operators. We really want to focus our first kind of 10 million of our $50 million raise, really getting as many people as we could, particularly of diverse backgrounds, because that makes for a really, really rich pool of folks to pull from when we need subject matter experts and access. Then the next tranche, we focused on corporations, right? Obviously, we want them known as LPs, but also the access to their network. So within, I won't mention any of them, unfortunately, but coming soon, I promise. But a lot of those corporations, they want to be more, helpful beyond the capital. And so what we're going to be intentional about is really tapping in and seeing, well, what are some of your strategic objectives? What kinds of industries and companies do you want to impact and influence over the next, 5 to 10 years, the life of our fund? So as we're sourcing deals, as we're looking at companies, we can say, oh, this startup may pair really, really well with this division or work group. But then to answer your question more directly, yes, we have, again, on the Collab Studio side, we have this program called our Founder Dinners, which is right now virtual, which is actually proving to be really, really great. Actually, it actually turns out to be a little bit more fruitful than we thought, which is where we bring in a subject matter expert or two around a particular topic. Is of no cost to the founders. We provide them right now with like Uber Eats or Postmates gift cards. They order
Cool.
dinner, and it's small and it's intimate, and it's a great way for executives, leaders, director level folks to connect with startups at a very early stage,
Mm.
build that network, and start to tear down some of the walls of those walls of opacity, those wall gardens. But then also it gives founders access to potential customers or at least potential advisors and folks who can help them move the needle. So those very intimate, small experiences, though they are small, it's usually, 10 to 12 folks. What we start to see is serendipity, right? And very magical things start to happen where, the not only is the subject matter expert helping the founder, but the founders start to help each other and build that community and that camaraderie, very similar to how Jewel and Barry and I did when we were building our businesses. And so we think that's important too. And when you have those subject matter experts that come from, the likes of Google or Facebook or Apple or NCR here in Atlanta or whatever institution or corporation it may be, having them there early is what actually is the bedrock of your ecosystems, is having that high level of connectivity that's a two-way, which is a two-way street.
Oh, that's fantastic. And there's a lot of data scientists who listen to the show and technologists. And for those that are listening in and going,
Mm,
I would love to get involved in like helping a startup. Maybe they're working at a Google, but they also want to do something part-time to help
yep.
launch a Black tech startup. What would be some ways for them to kind of get involved and what should be their approach?
Yeah, collabstudio.co. We have a place for you, I promise. So we are in our own right. We are raising a financial capital fund, but we're also raising a social capital fund as well. So we are building up our own database of talented folks that want to support, and we're building things too. I'm a full stack software developer. So right now I'm building an infrastructure to help basically search and source talented individuals that want to support Black founders and entrepreneurs, whether they're in our portfolio or just in our network. And we're going to be doing some really, really, great things later coming into the spring, where we're pairing people up. We're inviting them to dinners based on their need and stage of business. And then we're going to be looking for the data scientists. We're going to be looking for the types of folks that you're describing that are willing to spend, 5-6 hours a month, not long, just advising, guiding, and bringing that subject matter expertise that will illuminate and really unlock doors for Black-led startups and innovators.
That's awesome. Well, Justin, thank you so much for being on Data Talk to share about Collab Capital and all the awesome work you're doing. For those that want to get in touch with you specifically, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, Mike, first of all, thanks for having me. This was an absolute pleasure. Like I said, it's been a while since we've been able to tell the story. We've been heads down raising this fund. So it's good to come up for a little fresh air, and this was definitely refreshing. The best way is collab.capital. You can also email me directly. I don't mind. It's Justin at collab.capital is the easiest and probably the best way to get in touch with me. I'm getting better with managing my inbox, but if you go to collabstudio.co, you can also find other ways and other opportunities to support. So you can also follow me on social. I forgot to mention that, but I'm J Dawkins ATL on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm usually talking about what's going on in Collab, Black innovation in general, and the city that I love, Atlanta.
Okay, awesome. Well, I will, and I'll put all the links and all the information in our podcast notes as well as on the blog. Justin, thank you again for being on the show.
And thank you. I really appreciate it. And good luck with everything. And I look forward to tuning in.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Data Talk podcast. We share new shows every week, and you can find the full catalog of previous episodes, including YouTube videos, on our Experian news blog. You can get access to the full catalog by going to experian.com/datatalk. And we always love hearing from our community, so if you have any comments or suggestions for future shows or guests you'd like to hear from, please let us know. You can leave a comment on iTunes, or you can reach out to us on Twitter at Experian Data Lab. You can also email me directly. My email is michael.delgado@experian.com. Take care, and we'll chat next week.